Welcome to the Top Secret Wedding Podcast. Our top secret tip for today is if you have a client that is saying they don't want to do a formality or something, that's an opportunity to have a conversation about it.
Want to learn how to help your clients get the most out of their wedding day traditions? Listen to this episode. This is the Top Secret Wedding Podcast, where we share top secret tips to help you take your wedding game to the next level.
I'm Annika, and I'm a wedding coordinator, enthusiast, and venue manager for one of the best venues in Idaho.
I'm Chris, and I'm a DJ, master of ceremonies, and all-around lover of weddings.
We're on a mission to improve weddings and wedding professionals everywhere.
All right, today we are talking about formalities.
Yes, formalities, which I don't know if that's the term everybody uses.
Yeah.
But in my mind, it's like speeches, cake cutting, first dance, all of those.
Kind of like the wedding traditions that we're talking about.
Maybe that's what we should call it, wedding traditions.
Formalities could be 1,000 things. So wedding traditions. Today we're talking about wedding traditions.
Okay, rebranding. I like it.
Rebranding.
Yeah, we want to dive into a little bit of what maybe should go into some of those formalities, what you can help your clients with, and maybe some meanings behind some of them. We're not going to dive into the history of it, but I thought maybe we should do a series of histories of, that just
fun.
Takes a lot of research.
A lot of research time, but that'd be fun. So starting off, I think, well, first of all, why are they important? I feel like a lot of times nowadays, wedding traditions have gotten very like, oh, that's stupid, whatever, we're not going to do it, which is fine if it's not your vibe. That's okay. But it's important to understand the why.
Yeah, I think, the first thing is they can be meaningful.
They can.
Unfortunately, oftentimes they are executed very poorly. And so a lot of times I'll get people that come to me, and we'll get into this here in a few minutes, and they're like, okay, well, the first dance I only want to do for like 30 seconds. And then I dive into them like, okay, why? Why do you want to do that?
Right.
And they're like, well, I don't want to be embarrassed. I'm like, okay, tell me the truth. Have you been to a wedding that is done poorly and it was awkward for everybody? And they're like, yeah, I don't want that. I'm like, okay, well, then you don't really want a 30-second first dance. You want something that's meaningful and not awkward.
Exactly.
So
I think diving into the why of it, but on the flip side, diving into why the clients are not wanting it or are wanting something really bad. That's so important to understand.
Yeah. I tell clients at the beginning of my consultations, I say, okay, I need you to be honest with me about when I give you an idea, if you don't like it, I just need you to tell me, Chris, that's stupid. I hate that idea. Yeah. Because if you tell me, well, that's okay, then I'm going to hear, well, that's okay. Right. Not that sucks or that's amazing. And I think that's very important, because whatever opinions you have now during the consultation, they're going to be exponentially greater on the day of.
Yeah. And
so I also tell them, I'm going to tell you as well, if you give me an idea that I know is not going to work, I'm going to politely say, I don't think that's the best idea. Right. Here's another way that we can look at that.
Agreed.
And that's why clients should be hiring you for your experience. But
agreed.
These wedding traditions can be very meaningful if they're set up and done the right way.
Agreed. Another reason that they're important to an extent is because guests are expecting them. You know what I mean? There's a lot of times where guests come to a wedding and they're like, hey, okay. So like one example, not everyone does this, but like a bouquet toss, like, so I'm calling myself out.
Yeah.
But like, I love flowers.
Yeah.
So a lot of times if I'm going to a wedding, I am like,
you want that bouquet.
When is that bouquet toss? I want that.
But you're married.
I know.
But do you still get out there?
No, not anymore. But like when I wasn't married, but it's like, okay, like, yeah, like you're planning your night. You're like, when's that bouquet toss?
Yeah.
I want those flowers,
Yeah.
Same with like cake cutting, some people just love cake and they're like, cake, when is that cake cutting?
Yeah.
And then it's, again, to each your own, but when it's kind of awkward when you have like a cake and let's say it's a 3-tier cake and the guests are like, oh my goodness, I'm so excited.
Yeah.
But maybe they don't know that the bottom is actually all foam and it's just one tier and they're not serving it.
Yeah.
So again, sometimes guests are expecting it, and yeah.
Yeah, I've had guests come up to me. Usually it's like an aunt or a grandma or somebody, and they're like, hey, you forgot to do the bouquet toss. I'm like, actually, we're not doing it. It's planned. We plan to not do it.
Right.
So they are expecting it. And I think there's a certain level of, I think you should be doing some things that are expected, but I think there's also some things that you should try and throw in there that are unexpected.
Agreed.
And usually you can find those if you dive into the couple's personalities and their histories and who they are individually and as a couple. That's where you can find some ideas for that. But
what's your opinion on having like a posted timeline?
oh, I love it.
I do too. Yeah.
I think it's great.
Well, and I feel like, because again, like you said, if Aunt so-and-so comes up and is like, you forgot the bouquet toss, a way to stop that earlier is to have a posted timeline and there's no bouquet toss.
Yeah.
Then they're going to be like, oh, they're probably not doing it.
Yeah.
Or it clues them in a little.
In fact, in our region, we have a lot of, there's this trend where a lot of the receptions feel more like open houses.
Yeah.
And that kind of signals to people that they can show up whenever they want and leave whenever they want. And for couples that are looking for the more traditional reception where that is scheduled out, I tell them, make sure that you put your timeline in with your invites.
Yes.
Send it with your invite. So guests know, like, if I show up at 7:00, that's when they're doing their first dance. I'm not going to be able to say hi to them. So I think that having that sets the expectation.
Well, and I think along with setting the expectation, it helps give the guests an idea of the evening, Again, especially in this area, a lot of people feel like an open house is just the expectation.
Yeah.
But if you say even if you have a timeline that's like, hey, grand entrance is at this point and dinner served here. Maybe something as simple as like dinner served is going to clue in, oh, it's not just an open house where I just come and get a plate because it's open all the time, but it's an actual dinner.
Yeah. Dinner from 7 to 7:30 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
I think the other reason for wedding traditions is that they mark special occasions. There's a reason that these traditions are traditions. Having a first dance can be such an emotional and romantic moment. The cake, maybe less so, but that's because the tradition, the reasons for the tradition have died out a little bit. But a lot of these things, the father-daughter for me is probably one of the most poignant moments of the night, because I think about like the relationship that they've had, right? That the father he's helped his daughter when she fell off her bike and like all of those little things that are leading up to this moment. That dad has been waiting for this.
This is so stupid. I get so emotional.
I do too.
But like every father-daughter, I am just like,
I know.
It's just so sweet because it is a thing,
It's something that, again, people are looking forward to, and it marks a special occasion.
Yeah,
it's the grieving process for the dad.
Yes, no, it is.
Yeah.
Well, and likewise with like the mother-son dance, if you do that, like mother of the groom, I feel like is a person on the wedding day that so often gets left out.
Yeah.
Obviously their son is not the bride and whatnot, but they're still giving away their son.
Yeah.
And so often mother of the groom is just like, oh yeah, it's another person.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah. And I think that, sometimes these traditions force us into situations that give us better experiences than we could have had otherwise.
Yeah.
So like, again, with the mother-son dance, maybe the mother and son have not had a great relationship.
Yeah.
But I've seen sometimes these dances, this may sound like I'm overstating it, but I've seen sometimes these dances, the fact that they're going to have to do them and then they do them, it heals relationships sometimes.
No, it's true.
So I think that, doing something that maybe makes you a little uncomfortable, if you understand the reason behind it, that sometimes it's worth it. And you should be educating your clients and not just, I don't think you should just roll over when clients say, I don't want to do that. I think you need to dive in and help and understand.
Give your clients an educated decision.
Yeah. Right.
So.
Because most of them have never had a first dance.
Right.
They've only seen other people do their first dances. So, okay.
Let's talk about receiving lines. Just kidding.
Okay. Come on.
There's a whole other episode.
Jeez. Yeah.
So
That is a bad tradition. It's evil, bad tradition. Okay, let's talk about toast. In fact, we just did an episode about toasting. Toast can be really nice if they're done right.
I will be the first to say, yes, they have to be done right. Toasts are something I opted out of on my wedding, and I severely regret.
Interesting.
Just because again, you want to make an educated decision. I guess when I made that decision, I was just like, I had only seen awkward toast. And It was like, oh, nobody wants to sit there for 30 minutes listening to toast. I'm not doing that. But if I had had an educated decision and, when else in your life are all those people in that room for you and your husband? Like, I really wish I had, not anything crazy long or embarrassing or anything, but like, hey, can I have my sister, my twin sister, who I adore, shout out Erica if she listens to this, like say a few words, and that's a moment that I can never go back to because I opted out on I don't want to make everyone else listen through 30 minutes of speeches. So
yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah,
it's great.
So I mean, but on the flip side, they have to be done right. We just did that whole episode on speeches. But again, just make an educated choice.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Agreed. We didn't talk in that episode. We didn't talk about the difference between toast and speeches.
That's true.
So
there is difference.
We'll just throw it in here. I mean, there's a formality to toast, and we could probably do a whole episode on toast specifically. But if you're going to be toasting, raising a glass at the end, that's a toast. If you're just going to be giving a speech, it's a speech. But I think you should know which one you're doing and let your people know which one it is.
Yes.
So that, some people aren't giving speeches, some people aren't giving toasts. And if you have champagne that they're supposed to be toasting with and they don't actually do a toast, then it's wasted. So.
That's true. Yep. That's very, very true.
Let your people know.
So.
Cake cuttings.
Are you team cake or no cake?
I like cake. I mean.
Dude, I'll be honest. I love cake.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people don't, but I love cake. I love wedding cake. I love trying different wedding cakes.
I do like cake, but at the same time, if there wasn't a cake, I'm not totally upset.
If there's not a cake and they have ice cream, I'm ecstatic. but yes, yeah. I agree. Yeah. But I do think, I don't know. Again, I honestly don't know the history of cake cutting.
So there's a few different histories of it.
Really?
Yeah. I guess I can give the basics of it.
Give it
so
basics.
It's debated, and from different cultures, it's different. But part of the idea, almost every tradition in the weddings is about fertility. Pretty much every single one of them. So cake included. So for example, one of the traditions was they would cut the cake and then everybody, like the kids, would try and gather the crumbs that fell, right? Another tradition is that people would bring cakes for them to show their support. But the idea behind the cake itself is that it's like it has grains and it just represents the fertility and the growth of their family, basically.
Oh.
So,
it's kind of nice.
Yeah, the way that I look at the cake cutting now, since we've kind of done away with a lot of those traditions, is that it's their first work that they do as a couple. It's their first job they do together.
Yeah.
So,
did you and Nicole cut?
Okay, so yeah, so we had a really, really cool cake. It was called a topsy-turvy cake.
Oh, yeah.
It was pretty cool. And we paid a lot of money for it. I think it was like $700 for the cake. It was an expensive cake. And so we cut the cake, and we also had sheet cakes because we had a lot of people at our wedding. So it was cheaper to do like the sheet cakes. And at the end of the night, all the sheet cakes were gone, but our whole cake was still there. And we were like, this cake went to waste. We were so mad. We did eat it a year later. And it was still very good. It was a very delicious cake. But so we did do a cake, but that's it.
Some of the alternative versions I've seen, pie.
I love alternative versions.
Do you?
So much.
I don't know. I have a love-hate.
Here's my thing with alternative versions, because everybody will remember, like, do you remember they cut a pizza instead of a cake?
True.
I think doing something different, It's fun.
It is a very fun, good way to bring your personality into the wedding.
Right.
So, I do agree.
Pizza,
Oh.
dunk a donut, dunk a Oreo, like twist an Oreo, right?
Yeah. That's fun.
Right? That's what I'm saying.
All I've ever seen is pie.
Yeah. Pie is fine.
So
I love pie. I like pie more than cake, but yeah, anything that can be different, I think you should.
Yeah.
I think it's good.
Yeah. No, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
Okay. First dance.
First dance. What are your thoughts on first dances?
I love first dances.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
About the order.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I think I've always done it differently than everybody else.
Okay.
But do you usually do first dance, father, daughter, mother, son, or what?
That's typically how I do it.
Really? Is
Yep.
there a reason?
So partially it goes back to the idea that people think the first dance should be the first dance of the night. However, that's just because of the naming of it, it's a misnomer. It's the first dance of the husband and wife, or the first dance of the couple.
Yeah.
It's their first dance, not necessarily the first dance
Right.
of the night. So I like to do that first, and then the other ones. But we've done it in reverse order too.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like maybe I'll get roasted for this, but I feel like a lot of times I like to do mother, son, and father, daughter first. In my mind, it's like a passing on. So they like bride dances with her dad. It's the last dances.
Analogous to the ceremony.
Yeah, and then once those are done, okay, now they dance as husband and wife, and it's a giving,
Yeah.
That's just how, in my mind, it makes sense. But
One of the reasons that I do it the way that I do is because we do the love stories. And the
That
love
makes
stories go
Okay.
best right before the first
that
dance.
makes sense. So with your weddings, I could 1,000% see that. That makes a lot of sense.
But we have done there was a wedding we did a few weeks ago where one of the songs that they listened to while they were dating was Just a Friend by Biz Markie. Really fun. Everybody loves to sing it. And so what we did is we had like an alternate version that they were dancing to, and then the end it remixed into Just a Friend, right? And I had
fun.
gone around to every table and said, when that song comes on, you need to get up and get to the dance floor and just rush them and surprise them, right?
Yeah.
So in that instance, I think we did mother, son, father, daughter, then first dance, and that opened up to the dance party.
That's so fun.
So it's not a hard and fast rule for me. I think that, whatever's going to make sense for that couple.
Totally. You have to be flexible and do what's good for the couple.
Yeah.
But as far as first dances go, I love when they're shortened.
I do too.
Because nobody wants to sit there and watch you dance for 3 or 5 minutes. What if you pick a 5-minute song?
Right.
It's
if you go to the extremes, there's got to be an optimum length for a song, right?
Yeah.
So 10 minutes, clearly too long.
Right.
10 seconds, clearly too short.
Right.
So there's somewhere in the middle, and for some reason, all of the songs that are written for father, daughter, and mother, son, and first dance, they're long. They're extra. They're 4 minutes or more. Not all of them, but a lot of them. So I think that somewhere around the 2-minute mark, so 2 minutes to 2.5 minutes, I think is right. So we shorten it, and there's different camps to this, right? Some people on the DJ side, they like to have shortened edits, so that it's just smooth and it just sounds like the full song, but shortened. Other people like to have the full song with just cue points that they can jump to, so that if you can tell, okay, it's going a little long, we need to cut it, then we can jump to it. But if they're having a good time, then you just let it play out.
That's cool.
So it depends on your style. I like to do the shortened versions because I think that it can be, it'll just sound better in the moment. But
Agreed.
Either way, it should be shortened.
Yeah.
Unless it's choreographed.
That's true.
If it's choreographed,
don't shorten it.
Or make sure that you have the proper shortened version.
Yeah.
That they've practiced to.
Agreed.
Years ago, I had a shortened edit of a wedding song that the couple danced to, and it was not what they had practiced to, and I got some dirty looks. So I've learned. Yeah. So, okay. Here's something that I don't love. I do not love it, and you may be different, and that's okay. But I don't love it when people join the formal dances.
I agree. I don't like it.
Yeah. I think that the sentiment is sweet, but I think that it ultimately steps on that moment that couple has. And the reason most of the time that they're doing it is to take the awkwardness off of them.
Right.
But if it's done right, then it's not going to be
It's
awkward.
not awkward.
Um,
Agreed.
I think it can actually add some awkwardness because you try and invite people up midway through, and then there's a delay. There's like a 30 to 45-second delay between when people are invited up and they actually decide to get up and get to the dance floor. And I think that it can be done later. I think that
I agree.
you can say we'd like to invite all the fathers and daughters out for a special dance later.
Agreed. 1,000% agree.
Yeah. Yeah. So I there's also the logistics of getting people up and down. So if let's say you do the mother-son dance first, and then halfway through you invite up all the mothers and sons, then you got to get them all seated.
Get off the dance floor.
Right. And then you do the father-daughter, and then everybody gets up, and then you get them all seated.
Yeah,
And then the first dance and get them all up. And
it's really rocky.
It's up and down,
smooth.
and it's not great for the guest.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay.
I also think, and this goes for all of them, I guess all of these go for first dance, father, daughter, mother, son. I think the photographer, I think they need to get those shots. That's why I think there needs to be at least a minute and a half to 2 minutes. You need that length of time so the photographer can get those shots. And in fact, I'm going to take a side route here. I always tell people that say, we're going to do like a fun song. I'm like, I think you should do a fun song, but you should also have at least a minute of a slow song because you're going to want those pictures.
Exactly.
So that's my side route. But I think the photographer should have time to get those pictures along with enough time for the photographer to get out of the way and let them just have that moment.
Agree. Well, and I think, obviously it is so important for the photographer to get those photos.
Yeah.
But also like get in, get the photos and get out because how awkward is that if you're standing right in front of the family and they're wanting to be in this moment and you're like, step in, click, 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 click.
Yeah.
Get in, get out, and let the moment be.
Yeah, because in reality, if you're in their face the whole time, then that's kind of what that moment is.
Yeah.
You are actually in that moment with them instead of giving that.
Well, and of course you want to get you want to get her face and his face. And if they do a twirl, maybe get that photo. But in reality, once you've done that stuff, how many photos do you need of them?
You need 5 to 10 photos.
Yeah, right.
Maybe 15 to 20 if you are just so you can edit them down.
Right.
But that's not going to take you 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Agreed.
Father, daughter, mother, son, those are kind of the same. We've talked about.
Any advice or anything if, let's say, father's not in the picture?
Yeah. So depending on that relationship, I'm always one to dig in a little bit more.
Yes.
Sometimes, and I know this can be awkward, but sometimes when people are asking, when you say like, are you going to dance with your dad? And they say, oh no, my dad's passed away. A lot of times people will shy away from that and like, okay, all right, no problem. Right. But I like to dig just a little bit more in a very caring way, saying, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Is there anything that you'd want to do in place of that?
Yeah.
Do you want to honor him? Were you close with him?
Well, I think, again, it's kind of awkward and people flee from awkwardness. And so it's so easy to be like, oh, just kidding. But you don't know. You need to dig because what if that's just like, rubbing some salt in the wound of like, oh, I'm getting robbed of this moment. Like, you never know. One of my favorite memories I have of a father-daughter was that the father had passed away. And I don't think you were at this wedding. I think it was somebody else.
Yeah.
But the father had passed away. She still wanted to have that moment. And so she had another figure in her life step in as him, and they had a photo of him on the dance floor.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Okay, it gets even more beautiful. I was a mess, but they were dancing, and of course everybody was a mess, and all of these male figures from her life stepped in and
I love it.
Turned, and it was so beautiful, and I'm gonna cry thinking about it. But like, what was intended to be like a 45-second song, it turned into the whole song, and AJ had to be flexible because everybody, her uncles, her brothers, everybody who cared about her stepped in and took a turn with her.
I love that.
It was so beautiful. It was so beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, again, you don't want to just shy away from like, oh no,
Yeah.
we're not doing it.
I think it's better to be awkward in the consultation than in front of 100 people.
Agreed, 1,000%. So,
I also try and think about, if we're setting up moments like that are going to be sentimental, I do try and think about whether we're pushing it too far on the sentimental side, and we're going to make we're going to take away from that moment by bringing up some of those memories.
right.
Or making the bride cry too much, right? I think that you should be cognizant of that.
Yeah.
But I think that that's something she'll never forget.
It's something I won't ever forget.
Right.
But yeah, and I mean, every guest there was so in the moment.
Yeah.
And it was so beautiful that like nobody there is going to forget that.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, I agree. Another version of that I've seen is every member of the family.
Yeah.
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 So when these things come up, just kind of dig in a little bit to what the family situation is and what you want that moment to mean.
Yeah. Well, and I think being flexible too, because maybe dad is out of the picture, but mom's your person.
Yeah.
She's been there. And, traditionally there's no such thing as mother-daughter dance, but I've seen it done and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think that, like we said at the beginning, people are expecting something in that place. And when most of your guests know that maybe dad's not in the picture, right? Maybe he passed, or maybe he's just not in the picture. He's somewhere, but he's not in the picture.
Right.
People know that that's coming. And so if you're just a little bit more intentional and try and figure out what's going to be meaningful to that person, I think that that's really important. I
agree.
That's the day to do it, to figure out some alternative.
I agree.
So, yeah.
Okay. Anniversary dance?
I like the anniversary dance.
I love it.
I think it's fun.
I think it's so fun.
Yeah.
I mean, again, obviously the focus on your day is bride and groom, but the background focus on a wedding day is love, And again, you don't want to shift it so that it's all about somebody else, but I love how you do the anniversary dance.
Okay. Thank you.
We should talk about it a little, but I love how you do it.
So, yeah, for me, that dance is all about honoring marriage.
Yeah.
And side note to this, make sure that there are going to be people that are going to last through this dance beforehand. Yeah. Otherwise, it can be real awkward.
Well, and I think too, again, before you dive into it, you make it purposeful.
Yeah.
Which is, again, so important with all of these.
Yeah. So let's start off with what I don't do. A lot of people like to do the anniversary dance in reverse. Have you ever seen that? So
maybe once or twice. I get it, but I don't like it.
So yeah.
So
the way that some people do it, and I get why they do it, but to me it feels more like a gimmick than it is meaningful. So they say, okay, let's get anybody that's been married for less than 24 hours on the dance floor. So the couple, right?
Yeah.
Anybody that's been married for a year or less on the dance floor, join them. 5 years, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And so you end up with everybody on the dance floor, and for a DJ, that makes it nice because you've got a nice full dance floor. Cool.
Right.
Awesome.
Right.
But I think it dilutes the moment, because really what that dance is for is honoring marriage. And so the way that I do it is I start with every married couple on the dance floor, and I really dig to make sure that I get everybody. Like, I don't just I ask the couple.
Call them out.
I do.
Which I like. Like, I like that you ask the couple and say, hey, call them out.
Call them out. Who should be up here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because some people need a little bit of that encouragement, and, as long as you don't embarrass them, I think that it's fine.
Yeah.
So then I start with 24 hours or less, a year, 5 years, 10, 15, 20. Around the 20 or 25 mark, 25-year mark, I will announce to people, like, these are the 25 plus crowd. Like, these are people that they're in it for the long haul. And I don't even have to ask them to applaud. I just say, this is the 25 plus crowd. They go for it because they understand.
Yeah.
And then depending on the group, after about 25 or 30, I start counting by ones, because I want to emphasize the work that these people have put in and how every year matters. And so after 30, 31, 32, and I just count, and people start to get a little emotional because they're like, oh my goodness, these guys have been like, they're in it. Yeah. So that's the way that we do it. And then at the end, we're left with one couple. And I like to try and know who that is first before.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Cool. I didn't know.
So that way I know, like, if they're the grandparents or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But then I ask them for advice.
Advice. I will say too, just jumping back 2 seconds to counting by one.
Yeah.
It's super awkward if you just start counting by fives and then it's like you have 2 people left and then you go too far and you're like, wait, come back.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
So that's another side thing.
Yeah.
But I love that you ask for advice because again, it gives a purpose to the moment.
Yep. 100%. And it honors those people. Okay, so that's anniversary dance. Bouquet toss and garter toss. How do you feel about these?
Love the bouquet toss. But here's the thing. It's so important again to know your audience. It's so awkward and not good if you do a bouquet toss and there's like nobody that's single.
Yeah.
Like, hello, awkward, okay,
Yeah.
all the single ladies.
There's
get
like
up
2.
here, and there's like 2 or 1 and you're like, awkward.
Yeah.
But if you have the right crowd, I really do like the bouquet toss.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's probably for selfish reasons because I like flowers.
Sure.
But I do think it's kind of fun. I'm very, very, very over the, okay, you're going to pretend to throw it.
Yeah.
I'm very over that.
Yeah.
I get the photo thing, but like,
Yeah.
I feel like it's just done all the time now. So it's,
Yeah. I literally do it only for the photo.
yeah.
That's I mean, we play it off for different
Right.
reasons, but
Right.
that's why I do it.
Mm-hmm. As far as garter toss goes, in general, I'm not a fan.
Mm-hmm.
I have seen some I really like. Again, it has to have a purpose, and I love if it tells a story.
What
So,
do you mean by that?
so I probably only really have one example of this.
Okay.
But there was a wedding that we did, and he was really into cars, like really, really into cars and bikes and stuff.
Yeah.
And so he made a show of it, and it wasn't just him going and digging for the garter,
Yeah.
but he like came out with the little wheel thing to go under the car and his
That's
toolbox
fun.
and
Okay.
went under
That's good.
and it was just so fun. Like it brought a fun moment and it brought more of his personality to
Right.
the wedding. So like in that moment, I thought it was very fun.
Yeah.
But when it's just like, oh, well, I'm going to go under and dig, like that's awkward. You got
Yeah.
your grandma there and stuff. And most people feel awkward about it, and so it has to be done right. But like that car one, the photos were hilarious. Love that.
Yeah.
It brought a piece of him into the wedding and everybody was just having such a fun time with it.
Yeah. I love that. I think when they take the initiative to put some thought into it, I think that makes it different. And it makes it memorable for a good reason.
Yeah.
Maybe I have a slightly different perspective on this, but Google, where it came from, is pretty awkward. So
Yeah.
I think that as long as it's not over sexualized, I
Yes.
think it can be a good thing.
Yeah.
I'm personally am not too worried about grandma being there because, I mean, let's face it, this bride or groom or they're there because grandma knows what happens, right?
That's true.
So I guess I'm not too worried about that as long as as long as it's not over sexualized. Like,
Yeah.
Luckily, I don't think I've ever seen this happen. Well, I guess I don't know that I would because I wouldn't do this, but having the person put like the bridesmaid put the garter back on the groomsman or something like that. Have you ever seen that? Like it can be really awkward. I guess I switch that. But sometimes what they'll do is they'll have the guy who catches
puts it on the bouquet.
puts it on the girl that caught the bouquet.
I've seen like them dance together,
Yeah,
But,
again,
but then even that can be awkward.
yeah.
Yeah. Ooh, I don't like that.
Yeah. So I don't love it. And also there could be some major issues if a 14-year-old girl and a 50-year-old guy catches.
Yeah.
So
Well, and I have seen things like that where, like a 50-year-old guy and a 14-year-old girl catch and they're like, oh, now you guys have to dance together. And it's like,
nope. No, they don't.
No, they don't. Like,
Yeah, don't be weird.
don't be weird. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I agree. I
Yep.
agree. So,
Some alternatives to the bouquet toss. This is something that we've started doing. Presenting flowers to somebody that you want to honor.
Yeah.
Most times we see it as mother of the bride because mother of the bride does a lot of work and gets almost no recognition, right?
yes.
So the way that we do this is we call the mother of the bride. Well, I don't. I hand the microphone off to the person who's presenting. They call the person up. They say something really nice about them, hand them the bouquet, and it's a really amazing moment.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be a bouquet that you present, and it doesn't have to be mother of the bride. It's just somebody that you want to honor.
Yeah.
With a gift that there's not another place to honor them.
I agree.
So,
I do love that.
Yeah.
I do love that.
So,
as far as garter toss, I don't really know of any alternatives.
Yeah, I think kind of the alternatives are like what you said, kind of telling a story, making a game of it. I've also done where like there was a guy who is into baseball. Instead of taking the garter off, we just wrapped the garter around a baseball.
Oh, that's fun.
He threw it and then he signed it afterward for the person. It was pretty fun. So I think just looking for little things from the couple's history and who they are can kind of identify what things you might do. So
that's fun.
Yeah. By the way, if the bride wants to present a bouquet and wants to throw a bouquet, just have her steal one of the bridesmaids' bouquets.
Agreed.
If they don't have an extra one.
I do feel like too, as well as just like with a general bouquet toss, we're going away from using the bride's actual bouquet because most want to keep it.
Yeah.
You know, I kept mine and I made it with the thought of, hey, all right, which bridesmaid's bouquet am I taking? Because I want my bouquet, you know? But yeah, I think that's the thing is don't be afraid to use a bridesmaid's bouquet.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know this, but at least in my experience in girl world, it tends to be drama. But if you're a bridesmaid, just part with your bouquet. It's not a big deal.
What are you going to do with it?
Yeah, what are you going to do with it? So
just going to, yeah.
Yep.
Another thing that sometimes we'll do, this is an alternate version of the bouquet toss. When people say, I don't want to make it awkward for single ladies. Something that we sometimes do, we'll say, okay, well, let's invite everybody out and let's put a $20 or a $50 or $100 bill in the bouquet. And now everybody wants to actually get it. So now it's more of a fun thing instead of like a, So, if
fun.
You have the right group.
Yeah. Again, you got another group.
Yeah. And then the last thing is one of my favorite things of the night is the last dance.
I feel like well, I was going to say, you should talk about it a little more because I feel like it's a newer thing and a lot of people aren't familiar with it, honestly.
Yeah, so this is probably started, for us, we started doing it probably about 5 years ago, and not everybody does it, but it's basically a last private dance for the couple.
Which I love.
It works better for certain venues. It doesn't work as well at LaBelle because it's all open so people can just see it. But it works beautifully when you're able to put them in the venue room, close the doors, and they're totally alone. And you play a song, they can choose the song. A lot of times, if they don't know about it, I don't tell them about it, and I'll surprise them at the end of the night.
Yeah.
Because then it's something that they don't have to feel pressure about leading up to that moment.
Do you, like, if you're in a venue where you can close the doors, do you step out as
Oh, I'm out. So I think there is a 1,000,000% difference between having the couple in the room and having one other person in the room.
I agree.
It changes everything about it.
Yeah.
So when this happens, I always go up to the venue people. I say, hey, in a few minutes, I'm going to be doing this. I know you guys are cleaning up, but if you can just step out for 3 minutes, give them just a moment alone.
I agree. I think it's also so important for the photographer to like get the picture and get out.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
a lot, beyond photographer as well with last dances, especially at LaBelle, I've seen, obviously it doesn't work as great, but you get like the grandma or grandpa that's like,
it's always
there. And it's like, no, come with me.
Yeah.
You know, the best way that I've seen us set it up at LaBelle is like, okay, we're going to do a sparkler send off. Come with me. I need you to be ready for sparklers.
Yep.
But like, there's always one that's like, I want to see this.
Yeah. I usually, if I see people that, they have a harder time walking or I just know they're not going to want to move, I'll go up to them like 15, 20 minutes before and say, hey, just so you know, this is what we're going to be doing. We would love to have it totally just alone, just their moment.
Right.
And usually they're understanding. Every once in a while we get somebody that's like, but, we try and prep people the best that we can. And that is literally probably my favorite moment of the night because it's just for them. They're not on a stage anymore. It's just the two of them.
Agreed.
Which is why they got married in the first place. And when they come out for their send-off and they're like tears in their eyes, gets me every time.
Good.
Yeah, I I think it's a very important moment.
Well, and it's a beautiful closing of the night. You know, they have that last moment, just the two of them. They come out, everybody's ready for their send-off, and they're just surrounded again by all their loved ones. Like, it's such a beautiful closing.
Bonus tip for that, if you, when you do that, it gives you the opportunity to get people lined up.
Yep.
But you got to be really, really careful and say, when you're handing out, if you're doing sparklers, do not light the sparklers. Don't light the sparklers.
A tip? Well, okay, so at my venue, I require that we light them.
Yeah.
And you just hold it, because if you have it, I mean, again, you still want to say don't light them, because there's always someone who has a lighter and is like, oh, I'll just light my own. Yeah. But like, if you can hold the power, hold the power.
Agreed.
So
totally.
I also don't like giving out sparklers until right before we're ready. Again, hold on to them. And there's always people that are like, I need a sparkler. And it's like, oh, well, we'll hand them out in a second. But because even aside from lighting them, once you hand them that, they're gone. They're like, oh, look at the sparkler. Like, you know, so hold the power and you'll be good.
Yep.
So. Yeah,
that's great. Well, that is our wedding traditions episode.
Yeah, that's our take on traditions.
Yeah.
So if we
left any of them out,
I want to hear it. So
okay. Thanks. We'll see ya.
See you next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Top Secret Wedding Podcast.
Subscribe, rate, and review us, and we'll see you next time.